Good morning. This is Ellie Barnes, and this is the 2026 hurricane season report. This is the United States, and hurricanes come from Africa and they come along the East Coast, or they can come around the tip of Florida and come into the Gulf of Mexico. Sometimes they're generated, just they start out inside the Gulf of Mexico. So these are our two primary areas, East Coast, Gulf of Mexico, that we're going to be looking at today. I'm using the Marseille Tarot deck. It's an old French deck. It has less imagery than the Rider-Waite deck, for instance, but I also find it to be less psychologically comforting. I consider it a very kind of hard-cutting deck, and it just gets to the facts and the information. And sometimes it can be a little bit more pessimistic, but in this case, I feel like, it's going to be more accurate for something like weather, which really is not emotional. Our experience of weather is emotional, but weather itself is part of nature, and it is doing what it is supposed to be doing. Weathering. So, universe, the first thing I want to ask is the general nature of hurricane season in 2026. Are there a lot of storms? Is there a lot of activity in the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico? Or is it milder? The Hurricane Center, NOAA, has said they think it's going to be a simple season, less active season, because of other weather patterns. That'd be lovely. Anytime we can go a year without major hurricanes, it's fabulous. So the first question here for the audience and for my viewers: universe, go above my brain into the infinite field, finding true and accurate facts and information. Bring that down to us onto the table into the reading. The universe is infinite. It contains all information. We're seeking truth and finding it now in ways we understand comfortably and easily. For the audience, how serious and what does it look like? The 2026 hurricane season. And this is not any other weather, just hurricanes. And, a tropical storm could turn into a 1 or a 2 fairly quickly. So we know there's that kind of range of intensity. There is going to be some activity. There's no doubt about it. But I do think it is a much milder season. I'm going to say there's 3 major hurricanes, 6 storms that are 6 hurricanes that may be a 1 or a 2, and they will come into places and cause, wind and water issue, but not major. And I would predict also this year that water will be more of an issue than wind. Flooding and places that may already have problems with water will be more inundated. But definitely a much milder year, okay? Much milder year. So now I want to look at, I also think people help each other a lot more, and we are more kind and aware that it's not anyone's fault when their town gets hit by a hurricane. I think there's a tendency when something bad happens to someone else, we think they deserve it. And when nothing bad happens to us, we think we're good. Well, I've seen that scenario turn around so many times in my life that I realize it's not an accurate way to think. Nature is not karmic, and weather is not karmic. It's science, and it is the way nature functions, and I don't think it keeps score. Other things keep score. There's definitely karma, and there's definitely payback. Payback's a bitch. But in terms of weather, I don't think it has anything to do with deserve. So let's look at the Atlantic coast. We've got all the way up here to Maine, all the way down here to the Florida Keys. So I'm just going to do a span of cards that go down that. I'm going to do 8 and see where I feel like there's areas that have much higher risk for bad storms. I'm going to say let's look for bad storms. 3s, 4s, and 5s that really do damage and cause evacuation and put out the power and, cause a lot of beach erosion and building problems and fences going down and trees going down. That's what we really need to know about. So I'm looking at the Atlantic, go above my brain. In 2026, into the infinite field, finding true and accurate facts and information. Bring that down to us, onto the table, into the reading. The universe is infinite. It contains all information. We're seeking truth and finding it now in ways we understand comfortably and easily for Ellie Barnes and her audience. Hurricane season 26. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we definitely have, and I did do a preliminary video. I'll see if I can find that and put that up also on my YouTube channel so that y'all can compare. I did a preliminary video that I thought something came in North or South Carolina, you know, Charleston, Savannah. I don't know all my cities there, but so from Maine down Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. I'm going to say that possibly Virginia, Delaware, or Maryland has a water event, you know, a pretty good water storm, but not serious, not high velocity winds. But the North and South Carolina area is probably got a major storm, a 3, 4, or 5 hitting it. And I'll look later at the time period. But really, let's just be realistic. We know about hurricanes. June and July are relatively mild. It's August and September, historically, where we have this battery of bad storms. And then 2 years ago, we even had storms into November. I think hurricane season is June 1st to November 1st. But we had 2 or 3 more tropical storms form, and we thought they might become 1s or 2s in November. It was 2 years ago. So because of global warming and water temperatures going up, these dates may be more flexible. But then let's go on down. Georgia and Florida. I'd said something in the Gulf of Mexico around Panama City. I'll see if that's right. But Florida looks like it's hit by a 1, somewhere around right below Tallahassee. Maybe a 2. Okay, so I'm predicting 2 more significant storms on the Atlantic. 1 that hits North or South Carolina, and then 1 down in Florida below St. Augustine, a bit, and a 1 or a 2 with, newsworthy and evacuations, etc., and the government coming in. But again, really nice cards. Nothing that makes me really freak out about hurricanes. Okay, yes, any hurricane is bad for wherever it hits directly. And of course, on either side of the hurricane, winds that rotate right or left can form little mini tornadoes, and those can be very destructive for the particular location that it hits. I mean, I'm not downplaying that for whoever experiences difficult weather. All right, let's look at the Gulf of Mexico. So in the Gulf of Mexico, we have the Keys again, and the other side of Florida, and then a little tiny bit of Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. So this is what we're looking at. And I'm going to do 8 cards here, starting in the bottom of Florida and going all the way over to the bottom of Texas. And we know that hurricanes can hit Mexico, but I'm not focusing on that right now. Or typhoons in Asia. All right, universe, this is Ellie Barnes with her audience, and we're still looking at hurricane season 2026. We're looking at the Florida Keys all the way up the coast of Florida, and then Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and the full eastern side of Texas. And I'm going to use 8 cards there. Do we see what kind of hurricanes do we see in that area in 2026? Go above our brains into the infinite field, finding true and accurate facts and information. Bring that down to us, onto the table, into the reading. The universe is infinite. It contains all information. We're seeking truth and finding it now in ways we understand comfortably and easily for Ellie Barnes and her audience. 1, 2, 3. And in Florida, hurricanes can cross the state because it's narrow, and go on the other side and kind of regroup and be destructive on 2 sides of Florida. So we have to kind of consider that. And as we've seen in the past, hurricanes have traveled inland and been destructive. It's not just the coastline sometimes that, okay, Florida Keys. They always show up. I'm telling you what, year after year. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and I have another event. Okay, that's going to be in Texas probably, or the very west side of Louisiana, and that first little chunk of Texas. I'll show you on the map. Florida Keys. I didn't see it on the Atlantic side, so it may be something that occurs in the Gulf and is maybe also Cuba, Haiti, Dominican Republic. Right, that little pocket sometimes just gets pulverized. It's in a bad spot, you know, that location. So I'm going to say something at the very tip of Florida. I'm going to say, again, and I think this is correct, Panama City, Apalachicola has some event, a fairly strong storm, maybe a 2 to 3, and, you know, and people know about it in plenty of time, and people evacuate, and it's, you know, trees and fences and some old buildings. I mean, I guess the one thing about hurricanes now is that they're wiping out the crappiest of the old stuff, and new stuff that gets built hopefully is better built, better structure for hurricanes. And that is happening year by year. Better roof systems and all that, you know, are part of the plan. And of course, charging us infinitely large amounts of money for insurance are part of the plan too. Okay, so let's go to that. Alabama, Mississippi. I don't know. Maybe a bit of something there. Not severe. And then the eastern side. So I'm seeing this area right here, the Bend in Florida. Okay, something way down here, the Bend, and then it's over here. Okay, this is the eastern side, western side of Louisiana and Texas that I'm seeing. Ace of Swords. And this same card was in the previous reading for the Atlantic, and that's usually a very powerful message when you see Ace of Swords, you know, a yes, a strong win, a very powerful situation, a strike. And then the rest of Texas looks okay to me, you know. So again, I'm predicting a major hurricane on the Atlantic and a major hurricane in the Gulf, a couple of minor storms in the Atlantic and in the Gulf. In those areas, but North and South Carolina border, below Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Keys, Florida Keys. And I said, I see those every year. I just think they're in a very prone spot, and they're very vulnerable, very vulnerable. They're more and more fragile. There's a lot of bridges, so they just get whacked, you know. So does Cuba, just whacked. Haiti, poor Haiti. Love y'all, but y'all get whacked all the time. And then the Bend of Florida, that's Apalachicola, Panama City area. I'm going to say I've seen that twice now. And then somewhere in the tail end of Louisiana and the beginning of Texas. Okay, that's my predictions. Let's look at wind. I'm going to try to be pretty quick here. I'm trying to make shorter videos. So on the Atlantic side again, what months do these storms hit? The first storm will be that, these are the major storms, the North and South Carolina border there. When does that happen? And the one that comes in somewhere below Jacksonville. And since I'm not seeing the Keys on this side, and I'm seeing it on the other side, you know, that could be Naples. That's whatever's way down there, not Miami. But they do, it all comes to a point, you know, when you get to the Keys. And there's not as much land down there as there used to be, just like Louisiana. There's just not as much land. There's not as much barrier island, and there's not as much coastline. So these storms don't get slowed down as quickly as they did. So we got June, July, August, September, October, November. Let's just look at 6 months. When do these occur? And I'm kind of going to put down cards for the 3 areas and then look at timing with those. 2, 3, Yeah, it's perfect since the federal government has dismantled FEMA, the federal and national infrastructure that helps states deal with catastrophe. But I'm a state person anyway. I think the states need to become stronger, keep their own tax money, and decide what they need to do within their state. I think we can all see the federal government may not be what it used to be. Okay, the North and South Carolina border area. September. Okay, pretty solidly in September. And the rest of the there's a scare in July, okay, but it doesn't manifest. August is fine. September and then October, November look okay. All right. September for the North and South Carolina. I'll just leave those out. The top of Florida. July. August. Third time. I shuffle a lot. You guys can hear how much I shuffle. And this deck is a stiff deck. It shuffles really well. It's harder on my hands, but it's a great shuffling deck. I like a stiff tarot card. June, July, August for that area. And actually for Florida in November, there may be one more episode of some weather, you know, a tropical storm or the potentials, just like we had a couple of years ago, things kind of stir up and whether they dissipate or not before they come to land. There may be some of that. June, July, August for that south of Jacksonville area, okay? And then the Keys. Wow. End of the year. October. There's going to be a lot of activity in South Florida for some reason this year. I don't know whether people are just down there for business or politics. Maybe there's a bunch of conventions and maybe it becomes a hotbed of the refugee situation where they come across water. End of the year, October. And I do think there'll be a lot of things in the news, and maybe that's why I'm seeing it. Just things maybe coming around that bend, coming and crossing Cuba and the Keys and South Florida. It seems to be in the news a lot, okay? All right, so a little bit later in the year. And then, yeah, okay, so that's the ones in the Atlantic. I'm going to reshuffle for the ones in the Gulf of Mexico. And we have the Apalachicola, Panama City area, and the Louisiana, Texas border-ish area. When do these occur? During hurricane season 2026, when do these occur? Ellie and her audience. For Ellie and her audience, when do these occur in the Gulf of Mexico? I think it's interesting about, the news. I do look at weather, rain and et cetera. For me in New Orleans, we actually had a month of record rain in May, and which is great because it really helped pull us out of our drought condition we've had for a couple of years. And I'm a gardener, an amateur herbalist, so I garden and have a big piece of property where I live, and I want to know the weather. So I look through the week and build my week around it and potentially major storms so I can decide when to do what. And, the hurricane reports and the fires that burn and the earthquakes and tornadoes, they just show up on the NOAA site or the news site where you see weather. And they're just more and more prolific. It's constant stories about weather. And I think this is really a good money maker. It makes people really attached to the fear of weather and the spending money to try to do things to help themselves if they suffer bad weather events. And I love the alert systems. You know, it's wonderful to know that something is coming your way, but don't get completely consumed with it. The best thing to do always with things in life is be prepared, be organized, get your kits together. And this is for all kinds of things: money in the bank, money under your mattress, household items that you might need, medicines and self-care items you might need, things for your pets and children that you need. A more secure home and property, clean, neat, brush, cleaned up, in good repair. These are things you can do throughout the year that just cause a sense of calm and security and say, hey, I've done as much as I can to take care of myself and my family. I am prepared and ready for a variety of things that could go wrong in my life. And it just feels better. It feels better. I think less and less we should be waiting for some agency to come save us. I think those days are over, and I've said that for quite a while, and we need to, be more self-efficient and self-caring. All right, the Bend of Florida. August, end of August, maybe beginning of September, and also again with Florida, this end of season, November, storms potentially, maybe more rain, just more difficulty with maybe flooding because there's been water that's already come in, and we just have this. Florida is also part of that. The wetlands are getting wetter, and the land is disappearing. So coastal erosion. There just may be new problems that come up because of this. Okay, so for Florida, that Big Bend area, which is kind of Apalachicola, June, July, August, September is when, end of August, beginning of September is when I see that storm occurring. And then the Louisiana-Texas border. In July, there might be something sudden and a funny turn of something that is goofy. July, August, September, October, November. September, October. These are later. I'm going to say these storms are later in the year, all year, in the places they come into. But one good thing is I'm not seeing like this just massive destruction like Katrina or, like Andrew years and years ago just flattened South Florida, Miami. I mean, flattened. There are some devastating storms that really ruin whole cities. And I'm not seeing that for 2026. I'm seeing a lot more care and cooperation locally and states taking more responsibility, which I think is great. All right, really quickly in the last 3 minutes or 2 minutes here, any other advice for people living in hurricane zones? Anything I'm missing? Anything else I need to bring up or say about hurricanes? So it looks like we're okay in New Orleans, and of course my other city, Pensacola, Florida, looks okay. Thank you, baby Jesus, for that. And the people who want to send a hurricane to somebody else because they don't want it, don't do that. Dissipate the hurricane, dissipate it. Don't send it to somebody else. And get back in sync with Mother Earth. Pay attention to Mother Earth. Use less, recycle, take care. Don't be so wasteful. Don't be so snobby about it all. I think one of the problems we're going to face as humans is the next couple thousand years of reincarnating. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? I mean, transformation is the name of the game in the cosmos. Change is the constant. So don't get upset about that, but, grow and learn and develop yourself and your life so that change isn't so dramatic and it's so painful, that you can flow with the new. And always remember, when your soul calls to do something different and new, it's okay. Go do it. Any final messages for Ellie Barnes and her audience about hurricane season 2026? 1, 2, 3. There's always that last minute decision about staying or leaving. And I see both sides of the coin, and I mostly stay in my life. I have mostly stayed for hurricanes and battened down the hatches and boarded up my doors and windows and taken all my things in from the yard and gotten water and dog food and batteries and candles. And on a couple of occasions, I've gone to a stronger building, but still in the city. I didn't live here for Katrina. I didn't have to make that decision. But you want to, people want to stay because they want to start cleaning up. They want to protect their property. If the water's coming in, they want to move their piano, which is what I did right after Ivan. I'm glad I stayed. I had to move my baby grand piano fast. I had a lot of water coming in my living room, ceiling. I had to move paintings and books really fast. But when you think about potentially seniors like me, my old father lives with me. I can't get him out quick. I need to be thinking about my real circumstances. If I thought that New Orleans was going to be hit by a 2, 3, or 4 or worse hurricane, I would evacuate with my father and my pets. I would board everything up and clean up and, leave my house in as best a shape as I can and go sooner than later so that I'm not struggling with a lot at the last minute on the roads. So that's my message. Don't wait till the last minute. Be prepared. Make your decisions ahead of time. Get your plan ready. If you don't have a vehicle, make arrangements with someone who does and get a plan in place. And for the rest of our lives, storms and weather will be much more prominent. And we need to be thinking about it and being ready to handle it. So every year, do a little bit more preparation, a little bit more money in savings and a little bit more things to your house and property and a little bit more of a game plan. And you will feel relaxed and better, and you won't be so anxious. And always, as always, have a heart full of love and reach out and help people around you. All right, that is my hurricane report for 2026. This is Ellie Barnes. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have a website, elliebarnespsychic.com, and I'm on social media. And you can always reach out to me through these methods and talk to me about your own personal life. Get a reading from me, a video or phone. Some people come to my house. I work out of my home office these days, which I absolutely love, working at home and for myself completely. And, anytime you need something, spiritual work too, magical work, please reach out and let's talk about it. At least talk about it, and I'll have some good advice for you. All right, blessings, and see you soon. Bye.